But I would say that generally I would see women earlier in my career struggling more with some of the things that we've been discussing later in their 40s. And now it is not uncommon to have women who are 40, 41, 42 that completely feel like they have been derailed by it. So is and it's hard to pinpoint what that is exactly, but I would probably point to modern life and living. I mean, there's some beautiful things about modern living, like you and I are able, because of technology, to connect today in the way that we are. We're in different cities right now, but we're able to have this conversation. And there's a lot of beautiful things about our modern world. And there are things that are not so great.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Thrive State Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. V, triple board certified MD and performance and longevity expert. And on today's podcast, I really give you all the information you need to know about perimenopause and menopause. For all you women who might be going through this process here, for all those who are in women's lives who might be going through this period of time, this is everything you need to know about what's happening inside the body. What can we start doing from a lifestyle perspective? When do we initiate hormone optimization? And so much more. For anyone who has somebody in their life going through perimenopause or menopause, this is a podcast that's going to give you the tools as a supportive husband, supportive significant other, supportive family member or friend on how to support the beautiful women in our lives going through this transition period. Now, before we get into the podcast, if you are new to the Thrive State Podcast, welcome in. This is a place where I bring in thought leaders, experts, and world-renowned people in the fields of longevity, of performance, on how to live in the Thrive State, which is really the state of optimal health, longevity, and peak performance. And for all you returning to the podcast, thank you so much for being a loyal listener. Your love and engagement has really allowed the show to grow. And if you haven't already done so, if this podcast is giving you some value, please help the show grow by subscribing to this podcast, engaging with our content, giving us a thumbs up, turn on those notifications, and then share this info with your friends and family members. And for being a loyal podcast listener, I want to give you several free tools to help you on your health, wellness, performance, and longevity journey. Number one is really a bundle I put together. Longevity and performance resources, including an ebook, lecture notes from my global keynote that I deliver all around the world, as well as breathwork exercises. Exercises I do every single day to put me in states of calm, in states of clarity, but states of energy and productivity. Learn all those things by going to thrivestatestarter.com. Also, many people have taken my online course, the Thrive State Accelerator, as a 10-week course that actually puts you through learning the habits and implementing it in 7 areas of your life to put you in the Thrive State. What I've actually put together is a toolkit from that course for you to start designing your life, for you to be able to find your Thrive State. There you'll find worksheets, journal prompts, and goes into the 7 bioenergetic areas: sleep, nutrition, movement, our thoughts, our emotions, our community, our sense of purpose. Gives you all the blueprint you need to get yourself into the Thrive State. You can get that toolkit at mythrivestate.com/toolkit. Now, on to today's podcast. We have an incredible guest, somebody that I got a chance to meet recently, and she is really a powerhouse in her own field, Dr. Stephanie Estima. She is a chiropractor, best-selling author, and expert in women's health, particularly focusing on perimenopause and menopause. She's known for her holistic approach to health, blending cutting-edge medical science with practical lifestyle advice. With her wealth of knowledge and passion for empowering women, Dr. Estima has helped countless individuals navigate the complexities of hormonal changes. Beyond her professional achievements, she's also a captivating speaker, having shared her insights on various platforms and podcasts. We're thrilled to have her here today, share her expertise on women's health. And so if you are a woman going through perimenopause or menopause, or if you are a loved one that's supporting somebody going through this transition period, you'll want to listen to this podcast. So ladies and gentlemen, Please enjoy this beautiful conversation with myself and Dr. Stephanie Estima. Dr. Stephanie Estima, welcome to the Thrive State Podcast.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
I am really excited to dig in because the topic we're about to discuss in women's health and certainly supporting people through perimenopause and menopause is going to be something that is so near and dear to my heart because I have a significant other that's kind of, thinking, growing, maybe even worrying through the process. Before we get into the meat of the content, we do a segment on the show called the 5 to Thrive. 5 quick questions, game show style. And of course, you win a prize, which is a healthy meal on me the next time we meet. And I believe we're going to be meeting in Austin pretty soon. So you have an opportunity to claim your prize if you win. So my question to you, Dr. Estima, are you ready to play the 5 to Thrive?
I'm ready.
Question number 1 is, what is your go-to comfort food when you're having a tough day?
Ooh, okay. So my go-to comfort food right now is protein ice cream. Ooh. It is something so it's basically some Core Power, which is like a milk product it's a high protein milk product, a scoop of protein powder, and then some yogurt. Mix it all up, put it in the freezer for about 24 hours, bring it out the next day, and then I whip it up. It's phenomenal. It actually feels like I'm cheating because it has the sweetness. It has, if it's vanilla, let's say, or chocolate, feels like you're having a chocolate ice cream or vanilla ice cream, and then I'll put some chocolate chips or something on top of it. So that's my recent change, my recent go-to. Mm-hmm. And I have my kids on it, my husband,
Yeah.
Giovanni literally cannot believe that it's good for you. And he didn't believe me when I was telling the ingredients. And we actually worked out all the calories. So like a tub, when we split it in 2, is about 160 calories. And I think it's like 43 grams, something like that, 41 maybe grams of protein per serving. So it's pretty awesome.
Wow. Okay. And is there a brand of that protein?
So it's I make it with Core Powder, a scoop of protein powder. So I will use Equip Foods is a great brand, which I work with. Shkanusa, another really great brand. They're in the States and they're in Canada as well. So like your favorite protein powder, whatever you have sort of kicking around the cupboard. Sounds and then some yogurt, mix it all up, good for the gut, all the things. So yeah, that's my comfort food.
1,000 points there. Question number 2 is, do you have a guilty pleasure TV show or movie that you love to watch?
Oh, yes, I do. Yes. I love to watch real estate shows. So there's one from Paris. It's called L'Agence, which is basically, the agency. And then they go around different suburbs in Paris. And then they sell, these amazing apartments and houses and castles and everything. So that is definitely my guilty pleasure.
Oh, beautiful. 2,000 points there. Question number 3 is, what did you want to be when you grew up?
When I first, in grade 1, when they asked us this, I drew a picture of a spaceship and I told my teacher that I wanted to be an aeronautical engineer. And she was like, is your father that? Like, how do you know that word? So that's what I wanted to be. And then, as I grew up a little bit, I thought I wanted to be a pediatrician, and then volunteered in the NICU for a week and decided that I don't actually have the stomach for it. It was too difficult for me. My heart was broken after the first couple of hours. So ended up going into biomechanics and neuroscience, and eventually became a chiropractor.
Beautiful. Question number 3 is, do you have a secret talent or hobby that might surprise us?
Yes. Well, I don't know if it'll surprise you, but I sing. I love to sing. I take singing lessons, and I like to belt out Adele and a couple of those ballads in my range. Yeah.
Wow.
I love to sing.
Next time I'm really thinking of doing some shorts where I do some karaoke with some awesome people, and I'm calling you.
I'm in.
So I love karaoke, but I'm not a good singer. And that's the thing is, to be good at karaoke, you just have to enjoy being alive. And it'd be a good singer to do that.
So true. And not worry about the high note as it's coming, because as when that the high note is coming, you sort of get more and more nervous the closer that you get to it. You just have to plow right through it, and it ends up being better than if you overthink it.
Oh, so good. I can't wait to hear some Adele from you in the future. Question 4 is there a favorite quote that you kind of live by, or one that that has entered your life and it really has become like a mantra of how you approach life?
Yeah, there's a couple of them. I think the one that I've been holding closer lately, I was actually, me and my son were, we were praying together last night, and what we were talking about this one quote, and it was a bit of a teachable moment for me, but I was talking to him about the importance of failure, and I said to him, to err is human and to forgive is divine. And, the divinity lives within us and we can forgive ourselves and all that kind of thing that mom son talks in the evening. Or, dad son talks, of playing catch or whatever it is. So yeah, that would be my favorite quote right now, is to err is human, like welcome to the human race. We all make mistakes. And to forgive, particularly oneself, is closer to the divinity within all of us.
Oh, so good. We could even, do a whole podcast on forgiveness and what it
Yeah.
does to our epigenome and the expression of our genes. But maybe we'll get into that today. We'll see. Question
Yeah.
number 5 for all the marbles, because you've gotten 4 out of 5 thus far, is what is a bucket list item on your list that you haven't done yet but excited to do?
I have many, but I would say the one that comes up as you were saying it, it was like, oh, I want to salsa dance in Rio during the festival. Like I want to do like what is it called? I'm forgetting the Brazilian way that Sabadope, the way that they do the Brazilian dancing. I would love to go to Carnival and samba dance in Brazil during Carnival.
5,000 points, she wins the 5 to thrive, which means healthy meal on me the next time we meet. And I love this about you because I've recently joined the community that you and your husband put together, Giovanni and Archangel. For anybody, looking to up-level their life, should definitely check them out. Our paths had been meeting across for a while because I spoke at the biohacking conference a couple years ago, and you were supposed to be there.
Yes, yes, but I was, but in all honesty, I couldn't get across the border because my country, Canada, the People's Republic of Canada, as I like to call it, at the time wasn't letting citizens who didn't have a certain medical status travel. And so I wasn't able to cross the border. So I actually reached out to Dave. I'm like, Dave, I'm so sorry, but I don't think I'm going to be able to make it. I don't have any faith. Like, I'm not like, like, if anyone asked me at at the border, like, show me your papers, I'd be like, so anyway, so I wasn't able to come. But yes, we were supposed to cross then, but now we're here. So I'm very excited to be here and to
Yeah, I'm
getting
so
to know you
excited to be
better.
here. And you're my people. I mean, you like to dance, you like to sing, and
Yeah.
I can't wait to do more with the council and the people that you curate. And I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today because my significant other is 41 now. And, every now and then she'll go through periods of fatigue and she doesn't know if it's perimenopause or not. And
Yeah.
so I know, one, not every woman that they know that menopause is coming, but they don't really understand the signs or or what they should be looking out for.
Yeah.
And certainly as men, we need to learn a whole textbook and some to learn how to best support our ladies through our cycle. But this is a very pivotal moment in any woman's life. And so can you first of all, just kind of talk about what is menopause and what is perimenopause, and maybe just start off with that and we can go in a little bit deeper on the topic.
Sure. And I just want to preface this by saying I'm so happy that, whether you are a listener who's male or female, this is relevant to you because if you are a woman, certainly you are going to experience menopause. 100% of women will go through menopause if they're lucky enough to live that long to experience it. And of course, if they have partners or brothers or cousins or uncles or what have you, it's important for our beautiful men to also know what's happening as well. So it can be more of we'll say a communal effort in supporting her or at least understanding where she's coming from. I think, in sort of days past, we've sort of looked at menopause as this thing. It's this hush hush thing. Nobody talks about it and women would suffer in silence. And I feel like menopause is really having a bit of a moment right now where we are talking about this more openly. We are having these discussions with our partners, our husbands, our boyfriends, our, what have you, so that they can best support us. And I know, we were talking before we started recording, you've had on Dr. Jolene Brighton, who's a dear friend of mine, So again, that's another area where our men can support women during their cycles. And so to answer your question, what perimenopause and menopause is a retroactive diagnosis. It's basically 12 consecutive months without a period. So you have gone 12 consecutive months without ovulating. For the average woman and that's just like one day on the calendar, one day on the calendar. But the average woman will go through or qualify for that diagnosis around the age 50, 51, 52. That seems to be the average age that women will go through that. Perimenopause, peri meaning around, right? So around the time of menopause for women can be anywhere 5 to 15 years in leading up to that one day in her life. And so why perimenopause, I think, is so important to be talking about is that a lot of the symptoms are quite subtle. So certainly we think of hot flashes, we think of night sweats. Those are, of course, part of the classic signs and symptoms of that, wildly vacillating estrogen, where we have estradiol going up one month and then it's down the next month and so on and so forth. But generally, a woman can have mood and personality changes where maybe before she was more social and now she has not antisocial, but she just is less willing to get up and get ready and leave the house. She, going out with the girls where maybe that once was, an incredibly, enjoyable experience for her seems to be much more laborious than it used to be. She may be quicker to anger, even her senses. So she may be more sensitive to noise. So maybe if you are watching, I don't know, whatever you're watching on television, maybe you're watching Legends, you're watching my real estate show and it's too loud, or like suddenly in a movie, there's like an action scene or something. And she becomes much more sensitive to sound, much more sensitive to light. Her taste buds can also change. So there's all of these subtle things. And then there's also the bigger things like body composition changes. So a lot of women in their 40s will start to say, I don't understand. I've been working out, eating right, eating the same, like it's sort of eucaloric. It's the same calories I've always had. And I'm gaining weight in my midsection at a rate that I have never done before, despite whatever caloric restriction, whatever exercise regime that she has done prior, that is no longer working for her. So we also see, and we can maybe, depending on how much you want to get into this, like the way that she actually deposits fat changes under the changing concentrations of estrogen, because we sort of see a switch from estradiol to estriol, which is like a different type of estrogen. So we can see changes in, her becoming, relatively, increasing her adiposity, losing muscle mass if she's not resistance training regularly or strength training regularly, which we can talk about. And she has a much more that sort of bone loss as well. So like kind of physiologically, we're starting to see bone loss, that osteopenic presentation where the bone is now, if you were to look at it on an X-ray, and I've seen thousands of these just being in practice for the length of time that I have been, it almost looks like Swiss cheese. Like if you see an osteopenic or even like an osteoporotic bone, which is the disease state, the bone has like pock marks all the way through it, right? So it's much brittle. It's much more susceptible to fracture. So these are some of the things that we can look forward to if we're not being careful. But the other thing to note, even though it sort of sounds like doom and gloom, like, oh, I'm going to be sensitive to sound, I'm not going to want to see my friends, my libido is going to drop, my body composition is going to change. These things, there are strategies that we can put in place in our late 30s and our 40s to help with that transition. And also know that after menopause happens, so after that sort of 12 months, no period, women are actually much less, like in terms of like the neurological and endocrine changes that happen in a woman, she is much less susceptible to negative stimuli as she may have once been. So maybe something that would have angered her as a 42-year-old, as a 52 or 57-year-old is not really going to bother her as much. In some ways, she's freer. So there's some things to look forward to. And we want to put sort of our ducks in a row, so to speak, so that we're preparing for that change so that it can be as easy as it can be.
Working with as many women as you do, what would be sort of like the primary complaints or struggles when they first starting to see symptoms? Are, is it the changes in energy? Is it more the mood type of things? Or what would you say that people are starting to struggle with most once it starts to kind of creep in?
I would say kind of the big three are going to be body composition changes. Like women are very sensitive to changes in their weight and the way that they look. So they're going to notice that. I would say the brain fog, you mentioned energy, like the brain fog and like, why did I walk into this room again? Where are my keys? Where's my phone? Like that kind of walking around in a haze. So not having sort of clarity of thought. Again, we can trace that back to, there's a couple of things we can trace it back to, but one of them is declining sex hormones, in particular, estrogen and testosterone. So I'd say body composition, I'd say brain fog, and then kind of the mood and affect. So just not feeling like herself. Like she's like, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I'm so sad or I'm so depressed or she just feels stressed. Actually, the other one I'll say too, another really common one is sleep perturbation. So having trouble initiating her sleep and then also having trouble maintaining it. So she's waking up like 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning for absolutely no reason.
Yeah, so we know that, I mean, in menopause, it's really a gradual slowing down of the functions of the ovary. We get a drop in those hormones. In the perimenopausal period, are there typically lab values that people could look at and say, okay, this person's obviously in the perimenopausal period, or is estrogen coming down and then an increase in FSH? Is that something that could be diagnosed in the laboratory, or is it something just based on age and the symptoms that are coming up?
I would say that it's primary. You can certainly get labs, but there's so much bio-individuality. I mean, as you know, when we look at testosterone for men, really, like what's normal for men, it's like 300 to 1200. It's like, okay, that's kind of a big range. So it's the same. The same is true for women, right? So a woman might fall into normal ranges, right? We see this a lot with thyroid. That's the other thing that we actually see in perimenopause is we see the thyroid beginning to slow down as well. And so she still might have normal TSH, normal free T3, normal free T4, all of those things, but she feels awful. So I would say that certainly clinical lab work is wonderful. And if you are someone who has been ahead of the curve, let's say, and has been taking your labs every 6 months, you do have some sort of baseline in terms of what is normal for you. If you haven't, don't worry. A lot of perimenopausal symptoms often are treated based on the clinical presentation of the patient. So if she's coming in and saying, listen, my cycle is getting shorter, or listen, my body composition or my brain fog or my sleep, we can start to put into place interventions based on what the client or the patient is saying to us at that time. But certainly labs are important. Yes.
Yeah. Great point. Back when I was still having a concierge practice, I was working mostly with men, and, we see andropause occur earlier and earlier. Men are, dropping their testosterone levels at an earlier rate only because of how they're living their life. Their lifestyle has really expedited andropause for a lot of men. And so many people want to seek out hormone replacement therapy so early, in their early 30s. And that's not something that I would advocate for initially, because there's so many lifestyle things that we can use to intervene. Is that the same in a woman in terms of how she's living her life? Have you found that perimenopause and menopause are happening earlier for women, just based on the modern day lifestyle? And are there things that we can do to sort of support our women or encourage women to maybe look at to maybe kind of slow down the process, or at least mitigate some of those effects?
Yeah, I think that just as being a product of living in a modern society with, endocrine disrupting chemicals, and we put, weed killer on our lawns, and we, all these different toxicants that we use to clean our homes and all the things certainly can affect sex hormones. Absolutely. I would say that, I've been working with people now, let's see, graduated in 2003. So where are we at now? 20, so like 23 years, right? So I would say that, or 21 years, I should say. It's like, damn it, Jim, I'm a doctor, not a mathematician. It's like, I can't do math on the fly. But I would say that generally I would see women earlier in my career struggling more with some of the things that we've been discussing later in their 40s. And now it is not uncommon to have women who are 40, 41, 42 that completely feel like they have been derailed by it. So and it's hard to pinpoint what that is exactly, but I would probably point to modern life and living. I mean, there's some beautiful things about modern living, like you and I are able, because of technology, to connect today in the way that we are. We're in different cities right now, but we're able to have this conversation. And there's a lot of beautiful things about our modern world, and there are things that are not so great. And so I would say that your observation would hold true in women. I would say that some of the biggest interventions, save for menopause hormone therapy, which we'll talk about, hormone replacement therapy, some of the biggest things that women can do is to start picking up heavy weights. And we can certainly talk about what strength training and resistance training, why that's so important for a perimenopausal woman. And we also want to be thinking about her stress management. This is, I'm in perimenopause myself. I'm 46. I used to be able to handle like a whole bunch, like I would say yes to everything. And it was, and I would work all the time. And I just am at a point now where I say no more than I say yes. And I have to put some boundaries up around my energy and to make sure that I'm prioritizing what's important. And that's very difficult for women to do because we're not socialized that way, right? We're socialized to be nurturers and caregivers, which is, the mother, I'm a mother to my beautiful boys. So it's like, I want to pour into them. And that sort of spills out into, you want to pour into the PTA meeting, and you want to pour into the volunteer work, and you want to pour into your community, which is all amazing. And you have to make sure that you are taken care of first. So I think stress management is very important for a woman in perimenopause. And then I would say nutrition as well. So it's wine o'clock somewhere. Like I know women and wine, we love to have a glass of wine, an aperitif, or, something in the evening, like a 5 to 7, what we say, like a 5 à 7, like the 5 to 7 drink or something. You have to get rid of that. I've had many experts on my show that have talked about the risk of breast cancer, which is something that nobody wants to get, right? No one wants a C word anywhere, but, women don't want it in our breasts. But for every glass of alcohol that you have, you begin to raise your risk for breast cancer exponentially. And nobody talks about that, right? We all talk about, oh, it's wine o'clock somewhere, or I'll just have like a glass of red with my, with my steak, or I'll have a glass of white with my fish, or whatever. It's a girls' night I'm having. Like, cut out the wine, ladies. Like in your 40s and your 50s, if I can, I don't know how much more clear I can be, but like your body it's not, when we tend to have wine, when we tend to have alcohol, it's usually in the evening, right? So you're basically, it's liquid sugar. You're bringing it in, a whole bunch of calories, and you're starting to disrupt circadian rhythms. You're starting to, you'll disrupt your sleep and your wind down, melatonin, all the things. So, so I would say nutrition is really important. And then I would say a subset of nutrition is going to be really limiting your alcohol intake. And I know that that's really hard to hear. And I always get like, but doc, what about this? But what about the French? Like, don't the French, they have a lot of red wine and they have cheese. And it's like, forget that. You're not French. It's like, you're not French. I'm a Francophile. Like, I love the French culture. I speak a little bit of French. But yeah, I'm not French.
I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. If you are, I just wanted to let you know, join our community. There's so many free resources and a great community of people that desire health, happiness, human potential, to have more in their life, more health, more energy. And when you have those two things together, you could create more happiness, more abundance, whether it be financial, romantic, all these things in your life. And if you're just starting out, you don't know where to go, just sign up for ThriveStateStarter.com, because in there you're going to get a bundle of information that includes a longevity ebook, a longevity and performance resource guide, lecture notes that come from my keynotes at Google, at Fortune 500 companies, all the insights in that keynote in lecture slide form given to you. And then finally, breathwork. I share 3 powerful breathwork exercises to access calm, which really gives you clarity and peace during the day, to access energy, if you need to wake up and really motivate yourself. And finally, a breathwork routine that you could do every single morning so that you could be very intentional with how you create that day. You can find all this stuff delivered free to your inbox at thrivestatestarter.com. And our community is growing. If you want to be a part of a community of people that desire the Thrive State, that are really in Thrive State themselves and help other people along with that, you could be a part of the community. You can get group coaching from me. We do breathwork sessions, meditation sessions, and you also get to drop in and participate in podcasts in the future. You could find more about the community at mythrivestate.com. That's mythrivestate.com. So check out those resources. You're not going to be disappointed. And please enjoy the remainder of this podcast.
Not living in Paris.
You mentioned something that I think so many women deal with, and I certainly hear this of my fiance as well, is at times I would just say, well, why don't you go and have some self-care time and maybe do this or that for yourself. And sometimes I would just get the reaction of like, you just don't understand the guilt that I have in doing so. How have you been able to develop that boundary for yourself? And thank you for saying yes and not no to this podcast. But how do you start developing that? Because I think certainly as a culture, we raise our women to kind of take care of everything. And I know that, she consistently thinks of me, thinks of her work, thinks of the kids and all these things. And so how does somebody best cultivate that for themselves?
I think initially for me, I sort of realized that if I go down, everyone else is going down around me, right? Like my kids are not going to benefit from a woman who is ill and sick and complaining. Like I wanted my children to see a vibrant, happy, in love, fit mother so that they can, and we can talk about relationships as well, but like modeling that healthy relationship with my husband to my children. So that was really where it started from, because I was exactly like what you're describing, like just giving to absolutely everybody all the time. I was not even on my to-do list. I was not even on my list of people to get to, like if I made the list at all. So I started off that way as well. And as my business was growing and then I was transitioning way that I was practicing. So I had an in-person clinic in Toronto, Canada, which is where I practiced for many years. And I moved that more to an online based business. I realized that it's very easy to sit in front of a computer for 18 hours. Like it's very easy to go from coaching call to coaching call to coaching call. And then you do the management, then you're on a call with your accountant. And then and then the whole day is gone. So I really realized that if I didn't take care of myself, like the whole ship was going down. Like my kids depended on me to be present for them, to help them with their homework, to talk about what's going on with, all the things that children need at different stages. And even just sometimes my younger son just wants me to watch him play soccer. Like he's like, Mom, just come outside, watch me do all the tricks that I've been learning off of YouTube. Like that, he just wants my attention. So I had to start putting myself first. And that's why I work out in the morning. Like I give to myself before I give to anybody else. And in doing, it's so cliche, but the airplane, when they're like, put the thing on yourself before you put it on your kid. Like whenever I would hear that before, I'm like, forget it. I'm going to save my kid. Like I don't, but it really is true. You do have to give to yourself in order to be able to be the nurturing, loving, present woman that you want to be for the people that matter to you, children, husband, daughter, whoever.
Yeah. Let's now move into hormone optimization. I work with men all the time, done different things like peptides and, hormone optimization on that side. On the women's side, we know that more and more longevity clinics are doing hormone optimization in the perimenopausal period to save on symptoms. What is your take as to when someone should start considering hormone optimization?
Probably somewhere in perimenopause. Like there's been a lot of evidence to demonstrably show that there is no, like, obviously your individual history matters, right? So if you have a history of breast cancer, you have other, clotting and things, this is a conversation that you have to have with your primary healthcare provider. But for the most part, starting hormones sometime in the perimenopausal period is going to afford you to be able to benefit the most from at least the cardioprotective effects, and of course the alleviation of symptoms, which is why most women are going to go on MHT to begin with. But you get on hormone replacement therapy or menopause hormone therapy to help alleviate the symptoms. But one of the things, we were talking about estradiol sort of waning, like it's sort of this downward trend overall over, the decade in your 40s. And that is a very cardioprotective hormone, right?
Yeah.
And this is why we see, women who have not gone through menopause, there is that cardioprotective effect. We don't see that much cardiovascular disease in women who have not gone through menopause yet. But we see after menopause, we start to catch up to our male counterparts, right? So you'll typically see a phasic shift of like 10 years or so. But by the time a woman is, call it 55 or 60, she has the same risk profile for a CVD and sudden cardiac death and MI and all of that her male counterparts do. So we want to be thinking about, if you are symptomatic, for you to be talking to your PCP, your primary healthcare provider, around getting on hormone therapy. In perimenopause, it's a little tricky. Estradiol is a little tricky because she still is producing it. And then, like I mentioned before, some months she has so much, estrogen, and then the next month she's low, and then the next month she's high, and then so it can be a bit of a moving target. So it's a little harder to target estrogen therapy in especially in late perimenopause. It can be clinically, you really have to have a practitioner who's like kind of on the ball, like you're watching for symptoms as well. But certainly in and around your 50s, certainly in and around that time where you're going to be going in to menopause, estrogen therapy would be something that I think every woman has at least the option to discuss with her healthcare provider.
And I think most people that follow this show already know the difference between bioidentical hormone replacement versus what conventional docs used to be able to use in terms of using Premarin and things like that. But, for anyone who doesn't really know yet, what would be the difference in, doing something bioidentical versus using something that's in horse's urine?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would say probably the horse's urine, you maybe don't want to take that. I would just throwing it out there. Bioidentical is kind of a bit of a marketing term. It doesn't mean that, your estradiol is being, grown in some organic field with it's a bit of a marketing term. However, it is biologically identical to the estradiol that you make as a human. So I would say that, my order of preference for women is the lifestyle stuff that we've been talking about. So the strength training and the nutrition and the mastering of the stress, like that. I mean, that is really a lifelong pursuit. So that's always sort of happening in the background. That's majoring in the majors, right? And then in your 40s and in your 50s, starting to have this conversation around hormone replacement therapy. And in particular, we will be talking about the biologically identical hormones that are made by the body. So the bioidenticals, as you mentioned. The Premarin, when you're referencing kind of like when we talk about, mare urine or the Premarin that you're pregnant mare urine, Premarin, this was kind of the tools that were around in the early 2000s that were part of the Women's Health Initiative. It's not really used anymore.
Yeah.
So we still hear this kind of difference between bioidenticals and like Premarin and progestin and all these different things. But the tools and the products that are available now to women in, the States and Canada, Australia, any modern, like Europe, we're really talking about more of these bioidenticals that you're referencing.
Yeah, my mom was taking Premarin for a year, just a couple years ago,
Yeah.
through her OB before I discovered that that's what she was taking. So there's still some old school people that are probably using stuff like that. So I'm glad that they're
And
not.
you'll also actually run into OBs that are saying that they're going to say, no, you don't need,
Yep.
or any doctor, and like not just to pick on OBs. I have many friends who are OBs, but like many doctors who will be the prescribers. You don't need that. It's going to give you breast cancer. You don't need that. Like they did this study back in the 2000s. It's like that study. I mean, I've done a whole debunking of that study on the show, like the way that they sliced the data and the sensation. Like it's unfortunate because I don't know if there'll ever be as much money behind a study like the Women's Health Initiative, but they, just like for anyone listening very quickly, the average age of the participants was like 63 years old, so well past menopause. I think 75% of them were obese and or smokers. So if you're looking for a population that has a profile that is going to increase your risk for a cardiovascular event, it would be an older smoker who's obese. Like these are like, it's like age, smoking status, and BMI. These are the things that we actually look for when we're trying to predict risk. And these participants had all of those things in spades. And of course, what they saw was an increase in certain events. And even I think there's actually this, they redid some of the statistical analysis, and they actually found that the individuals who took like the bioidenticals that they had at the time actually lowered their risk of cardiovascular. And I'll get you you can put this in the show notes, but I'll get you they statistically analyzed the WHI again, like 20 years later, and had found that actually when they were using like the bioidenticals that they had at the time, 24 years ago now, they actually found that in some ways that was actually protective.
Yeah. Let's move now over to strength training, because I know at least it has been a little bit taboo, some
Yeah.
women avoiding strength training. I don't want to look like a man or whatever they might feel. Can you talk to us? I mean, I see you and Giovanni at the gym all the time. You guys are like the Brad and Angelina
I love it.
out there. But why the focus on strength training?
Yeah.
And can you maybe dismiss some of the taboos as to why some women aren't doing it and maybe why they should?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm 46. I get it. I grew up in the cardio room as well. Like, I was always on the eclipse or the elliptical or whatever. So I get we've been often fed this idea that cardio is for fat loss and, strength training is for the bros, and women generally are trying to lose weight. Like I've spoken to tens of thousands of women at this point, and most of them will tell me that they've been on some kind of diet or another for the majority of their lives, right? So they're always trying to get smaller, skinnier, etc. So I would love to reframe that for women in terms of a few things. So strength training, first of all, let's just call it the elephant in the room. Even if you wanted to get bulky, even if you like, which is kind of what I want at this point, right? It is, as a woman, I have maybe 1/10 to 1/20th of your testosterone, doc. So even if I wanted to, it is going to be orders of magnitude more difficult for me to get bulky. And it's going to take multiple decades for that to actually occur. So there's that. It's very difficult. We do have more testosterone than we do have estrogen in our bodies. Like testosterone is the primary sex hormone for women as it is for men. But it are, of course, in the testosterone metabolic pathway, as you know, it's also converted into estrogens. So it is very difficult for women to get bulky. And I always like to say the bulking doesn't happen in the gym. The bulking happens in the kitchen, right? So you will bulk based on the calories that you're taking. If you are in a caloric surplus and you are not using that energy, let's say, to assimilate new muscle proteins because you've just trained at the gym or whatever, you're going to put on more, not muscle, but you're going to put on more adipose tissue. You're going to put on more fat. So there's that. We mentioned the body composition changes that a lot of women experience in their 40s. What I wanted to mention specifically is what a lot of women will see is the weight that we tip, like under the influence of estrogen, women will deposit fat, bums, hip, thighs, lower tummy. As that estrogen wanes, as it gets lower, we will start to deposit fat through our midsection, kind of like men, right? So when men gain weight, it's usually that central adiposity, right? That midsection weight. So and part of that is subcutaneous, but more of it is visceral, right? So from a metabolic perspective, you are becoming more metabolically unhealthy when you are putting on more fat on your organs. That's what visceral fat is. It's basically fat accumulation on your organs. So when we are, and the other thing I'll say before we get to strength training is you also become, I didn't mention this before, but you become more insulin resistant as you age, just naturally. Men and women do it. So if you are not strength training, well, I'll say strength training is the easiest way to reverse insulin resistance. They've actually seen in just with one damn session of lifting weights, you will sensitize your muscles to insulin, which is basically a growth hormone. The muscles can pull in insulin in an independent way, like they don't need insulin, or they can do it in an insulin dependent way. They can pull glucose from the bloodstream. And so you will sensitize your muscles to glucose. You will sensitize your muscles to insulin after just one session, right? And then the more muscle mass that you put on, this is considered lean tissue, right? It's active tissue. You're going to naturally increase your own testosterone levels, which is wonderful, right? So that's like your libido, that's your cognition, that's helping with the brain fog, that's helping with being decisive and quelling anxiety. And it's also going to, of course, help with developing curves, right? So we want to develop curves, for women, it's like the shoulders and the booty. Those are the two big, places that we want to be building muscle. And it's going to be helping with our mobility. So one of the things that we don't think about when we're 40 is how frail we might potentially be when we're 60 or 70, right? You don't want to fall. You don't want to trip over a carpet or trip on an icy patch of whatever in the middle of winter and fall and break your hip, because we know that, I think every year, I always check the CDC stats, the Centers of Disease Control. So this is American stats, but they usually will bring in, like every year, I think it's 300,000 women or 300,000 individuals will have a fall where they have a hip fracture. 75% of that number is female. Mm. So it is a big chunk of that 300K every year that's fracturing their hip, that they're female. We know that when you fracture the hip, one, that can be fatal. So within 1 year, 50% of people who are hospitalized don't actually survive that first year post-hip fracture. And if you do survive it, your risk for dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, all of these sort of neurodegenerative diseases also skyrocket through the roof. So we want to be thinking about being strong and beautiful and aesthetic, right? So we want to be thinking about all the curves, the booty, the shoulder, the beautiful back, all that kind of stuff. But we also want to be thinking about it from a mobility perspective. I think about it this way. Like my children are teens, in their teen years now. I want to meet their children. Like if that's what they decide in their life and all that stuff, like I want to meet my grandchildren. And I not only want to meet them, but I want to play with them, and I want to get down on the floor with them, and I want to be able to pick them up and take them to the park. And I want to be able to say to my sons or my son's wife or whatever, I'll take the kids today. Don't worry. And they don't have to worry. Like I want to be like a kick-ass grandmother. So I think about it for, like I'm future pacing my life. And I'm also like really strong now. Like I move couches and stuff in the house. So there's a mobility, there's an aesthetic. The other thing I'll say too is if you are still menstruating in perimenopause, you typically are just a little bit more irregular. Weightlifting also really helps with that progesterone estrogen balance. So you can refer to your conversation with Jolene to understand what that is. But in the second half of the cycle, a lot of women also struggle, like the mood, the affect, the anxiety is usually because of that low progesterone. So lifting weights for women actually helps that P to E balance, that higher progesterone relative to estrogen in the luteal phase of the cycle. So I've been talking forever. I'm sorry. I'll stop. But I get really excited about strength training.
And the people in your lives, support your ladies to go to the gym. And speaking of support here, how would you say, if you were a significant other to somebody who was in the perimenopausal period, or maybe, whether it be a significant other or family member or friend,
Yeah.
how do we best show up? And what are the things your husband does or that you have maybe trained him to do that allows him to be the best form of support during this transition period?
Great question. I think there's a really good video online. I didn't make it. I wish I did. It's called "It's Not About the Nail." Have you ever heard of this video?
I think so. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I'm gonna send it to you. It's so funny. It's the difference in communication between men and women. So I won't spoil it for anyone, but go look that up. It's on YouTube. It's Not About the Nail is the name of the title of the YouTube short. And I think for the men that are listening that are wanting to support their women, I think just listening to them, I think that men can often want to jump in and fix things. Like they're like, but I see the solution. So here's the solution. Like just like get up and let's just go to the gym and like you'll feel better. And it's like, even though you're right, right? You're right. Going to the gym is going to help her. She has to get there on her own. We want to support our, and I do this too. Like I do this too. It's like, I know like my kids will come to me the problem. I'm like, I know what the solution is. It's just like this, just do this. And there's no problem, but we want to just listen to our women, allow them the space to kind of verbalize what's happening for them. Maybe it's not just verbal. Maybe they need to cry. Maybe they just need to feel safe and supported by you. And then you can, you want to connect before you correct, right? So you want to connect with them. You want to make them feel loved and seen and heard and understood. And then that's the time to make a suggestion. Like, you know what? I feel like you're sad, your body composition, whatever you're talking about. Like, why don't you just come to the gym with me next time? And like, I'll show you a couple things in the weight room, or like I'll hire a personal trainer and like just a session or two. If you like, that's the time to add the suggestion and don't jump right to the solution, even though you're right. Right. It's about like, do you want harmony or do you want to be right? It's like, which one do you want? I remember, and I'll just share this story because I struggle with this as well. My son had he had a glute in like basically a hip flexor and like glute injury. Like there was like a mechanical like he wasn't firing the glute anyway, it doesn't matter. He plays soccer, and I was like, well, you're so lucky you have me as your mom. I know exactly what's going on, like this and this and this. And he was like, ugh, whatever, mom. Like you're so like, please, like I'm too cool for you. So I was like, all right. I know exactly what's going on, but I'm going to take him to my friend who is a athletic therapist. She works with soccer players and whatever. And I was like, okay. So I brought him, they had their appointment, and she gave him the exact same rehab exercises that I had been telling him that he used to do. And he came back and he's like, Mom, she knows exactly what it is. And like, it's this, it's like my glute and this. And I was like, oh, great. That's amazing. Amazing. What did she tell you? What were the stuff, and he's like, oh, and she told me to do this thing and this thing and this thing. And I was like, great. Awesome. We have a program. It's like, I just wanted him to get better. I didn't want to be right. So swallowed my ego, even though I was like, God damn it. I know what's happening. It's the glute and the hip flexor. But I just swallowed it, let him have his own process of discovery. He does his rehab. He's better, so yeah.
Amazing. Connect before we suggest. That's such a beautiful, I think, certainly connecting with women in general, my tendency is to always try to problem solve. And I think that's where I think my perceived value is, but I'm learning to really listen and just to hold space. And
want to feel safe. I'll tell you that women cannot heal if they don't feel safe. That's my own experience, like my own personal as a woman. Like I can't do the work unless I feel like I'm supported and safe. And I would say the women that I've spoken to, like it's a fundamental for whatever reason. I don't think men need it as much as women. Could be wrong there. Feel free to correct me in the comments. But I think women need to feel safe. Yeah.
Yeah. No, beautiful. For the people, this has been a great conversation. And I think so many people, whether they're a woman kind of going through the process themselves or somebody in a woman's life going through this process, such great information. If people want to go deeper into your work, and I know you offer some programs for women as well, how do people find you and work with you in the future?
Oh, thank you so much. So generous of you. Yeah. So I, like you, I'm a podcast host. Better with Dr. Stephanie is where we talk to thought leaders such as yourself on all things metabolism, body composition, fitness, stress management, and what it means to architect a life well lived. The other place you can find, we have a weekly newsletter called the Mini Pause, which is my little fun take on menopause. And that's like a roundup of the best action items for women 40 plus. Again, nutrition, fitness, stress, all the things. Yeah.
Beautiful.
And you can find that's drstephanieestima.com/newsletter.
Definitely check that out. And Dr. Stephanie, with all the different modalities and life experiences, in your decorated career and life, what has been your best medicine?
What has been my best medicine? I think there's a couple ways I want to answer this, but I'll to be brief, I will say that the best medicine was realizing that I had it within me all along. So it's almost like the, Glinda the Good Witch, like you had it, you just had to click your heels at any time. You could have gone home, I think I spent a lot of time in my own life striving for external validation, accolades and degrees and success and magna cum laude and this and this. And I think the best medicine for me is just knowing that I've always had, I don't need to prove anything to anybody, like and my best is enough. And just coming to a place of peaceful awareness.
So good. Dr. Stephanie, thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom, and for reminding everyone listening that you are indeed your best medicine. Thanks for being on the show.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Thrive State podcast. And if you're finding that this content is really helping you and your family members, please consider supporting our mission and our cause of elevating health, happiness, and human potential for people all over the world. You can do so by making sure that you subscribe to this podcast, sharing it with your friends and family members, and leaving us a 5-star review wherever podcasts are heard. All these things are going to really help elevate the show and to give us the resources to continue to bring more content just like this to yourself as well as the people that you love. If you haven't already, you might want to consider joining our community. We actually have a community where people get to engage with me in group sessions where we do breathwork, meditation, where we do challenges together, really to be able to get us access to health, happiness, human potential, so that we could have longevity and performance in our life as well. You can check out our community at mythrivestate.com. That's mythrivestate.com. And if you haven't already, pick up a copy of my book, Thrive State. It really gives you all the tools, the pillars that you need to create a blueprint to control the energetics of your life. Who are you? How you show up in the world? The choices that you consistently make create an energy in your body, and you can control this. And when you can control that, you also control the messages you give to your DNA that gives you access, again, to optimal health, longevity, and peak performance. And let me also just share a free gift to you. If you haven't already, please pick up my longevity and performance bundle where I share lecture notes, ebooks, breathwork exercises, and longevity and performance resources at thrivestatestarter.com. Thank you so much for being a part of this community. Thank you for helping us grow. Remember always, my friends, that you are your best medicine.